The Primordial Fire is a debut full-length album from Hellavenger, a Santiago, Chile-based black metal band, and one that was more focused on 80s black metal to start, something more influenced by Venom and the offshoots of Show No Mercy era Slayer, and they had a very classic sound on their first demo tape. By the second demo tape, they'd clearly taken in a more extreme direction, whether you're looking for something like Sarcophago or related bands like Deathword's Force of Darkness and I guess I would say Slotbath as well. There is a mixture of death metal, thrash metal intensity in terms of the riffcraft and the attack of their music, but it is black metal in intent. It is blasphemic music that has roots in classic thrash metal, extreme thrash metal, and a certain aggressive attack that focuses on riffs, but has, things like keyboards and dramatic movements that still has that early second wave black metal touch to it in some sense. I wouldn't say that the aspects of this music really breach beyond the early 90s in any sense, and they don't really touch upon like Scandinavian sounds. This is very much a South American style black metal record focused on the late 80s and early 90s sounds. And so we'll get a sense for that right now with just a song front, and then I'll talk about how this album is arranged and set up and why it works for me. This band was started by Hellavenger back in 2011, I believe, and he didn't really produce very much because I think he'd been working on a lot of other bands. He'd been a big part of Communion early on. He'd been a part of Deathwords for a while. He had a couple of bands that he was working on, but he wanted to take control of the idea and go with it, and that's what he did with Hellavenger. And so basically, there's those elements of, like I said, classic thrash, things like early Creator, Merciless, that sort of attack. This album has the drummer from Force of Darkness, and not only is he a fantastic drummer, but he's good at all kinds of paces beyond just aggressive and flinging it out there. So if you're a fan of like Disaster and that kind of thing, you will get a little bit of a mid-placed black thrash metal feeling from some of these songs here and there because they do have a bit of speed metal in their movement and arrangement. And so all of these things add up together with a little bit of like the Brazilian style in there too, and we get a very strong record that is riff oriented, aggressive, and old school in every sense. Now, the thing to include in my description is that there are several keyboard like interludes, and it leaves the album playing a little bit like the first Acheron record, where there was a 1 or 2 minute keyboard interlude between every song. In this case, there's, I think, 3 or 4 of them, and they act as extended intros to the tracks in between, and they are done by a variety of artists, either were Earwicht from Grab and Hold, or Naradzia from Aragon, and whatnot. So they all have a little bit of a different hand, but they're all aiming for something that is more like a horror movie type soundtrack sound. So it really makes it so it sounds like there's a classic early 90s black death metal record that has a little bit of a horror soundtrack influence, but also thrash metal in there too, and it makes for a very cool record, kind of the rare sort of record that we don't get very often, and one that speaks to a strong personality from Hellavenger going forward. It is, like I said, front to back an old school experience. It is an underground death metal experience and a black metal record overall in the way that they want to frame it, but this will appeal to a lot of people who are just looking for the authentic thing, the real thing. And when I picked it up at the start of the month, I was expecting something cool, maybe something early 90s black metal, but I got more of the 80s than I was expecting, and that made me a lot more excited for it. So for me, that's a high recommendation. See how that lines up with your own taste, and read my review for more details on what this band is all about and how they kind of pull it together for this album.